Hello everyone and welcome to the Constructive Criticism Network. This network is here to help you improve at Magic the Gathering at every level. From Pauper Leagues to Top 1000 Mythic, we've got you covered. If you want to hear the entire network, head on over to our sponsor at puremtgo.com, where you can hear each and every show, each and every week, and check out their sponsor, MTGO Traders, and tell them that the CCMTG Network sent you. Now sit back, enjoy the show. From YouTube, podcasts, and more, here's this week's episode from ConstructiveCriticism.com. Hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Arena Mythic Cast. I'm your host Spencer, and I'm joined, just like I am every week, by my fabulous co-host, who did not get McDonald's for breakfast because her son tricked her, Michaela Downs.
Hello everyone. For the record, I personally was never getting McDonald's for breakfast. My son was getting McDonald's for breakfast, but...
I was telling our guest, who I'll introduce in just a second, you can see him on the screen, that, it's not hard to convince my son to go to McDonald's for breakfast because I'm the one that wants to go get an Egg McMuffin, so, our guest is West Singleton from the Need to Nerd podcast. West, what is your opinion on McDonald's breakfast?
I like McDonald's breakfast best at 2 a.m.
It's harder to get during COVID. They, most places have stopped doing all-day breakfast. It's really sad.
That's fair. It's been a long time since I've gone to get McDonald's breakfast at 2 a.m. So, honestly, it's actually closer to like 5 a.m. because it's usually after like a midnight pre-release. Which hasn't happened in COVID either.
Can we get some quick opinions on the best McDonald's breakfast item? I'll go first.
Okay.
I like the sandwich, but with the bagel.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Just a straight up Egg McMuffin with a bagel?
I don't know what it's called, but yes, I think so. And I think it's McDonald's. Hopefully this is like a Burger King mix-up or something, but I'm pretty sure it's McDonald's.
That sounds dope.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of just a classic Egg McMuffin, maybe add cheese. Or add cheese, add bacon if you want to get fancy.
I think I used to go with their breakfast burrito option, like little tiny roller things.
Sure.
I'm not sure it was correct. I think that's what I used to go with.
Nice. Well, West, welcome to the show this week. West, you have achieved Mythic, and you are our Mythic guest for the month. You achieved Mythic in Limited, and you did basically your whole run in our new AFR set, right?
I had a good setup. I played a lot of Strixhaven in July because I was preparing for a Strixhaven draft at Oasis Games. And I was still having a lot of fun with that set. So I was probably, high platinum when AFR came out. But I did breeze my way through Diamond and into Mythic, and I didn't just stop there. I made a run at number one. The highest I got in Mythic for AFR was 4 on the ladder.
Nice.
Awesome. We're going to get into kind of the overall format and a specific deck for this show. I want to apologize to the video listeners. You might notice there's not a normal overlay. Apparently I never made a 2-person side overlay for this podcast. So I'm going to get some new overlays made, and I wanted to apologize. But let's quickly plug our sponsors. We have our first sponsor over at Grey Viking Games. You can use the code MYTHIC10 to get 10% off. Get all your arena things. I personally haven't used my arena code from the pre-release, but if you didn't even get to attend a pre-release, maybe COVID was still popping where you are. That's a weird way to say that. Grey Viking Games is the best place to get your pre-release codes, sleeves. It's cheaper than using the store on Arena, and honestly, it's just a great deal. So get that 10% off, and yeah, check it out. And don't forget to check out our other sponsor over at puremtgo.com. If you are, a standard player looking to play in standard challenges, their sponsor is the best way to get those cards right now. People have complained about the nonstop, really, about just not being able to get standard cards from the rental services for these events, and the best way to get them is just go over to their sponsor, head on over to MTGO Traders, let them know that you were sent from us at Pure MTGO, and it's super helpful for the show. We are still looking for Mythic Guests, so we'll be looking for Mythic Guests next month. You can tweet at us with your Mythic deck using, just adding us and using the hashtag #ReadyForBattle, and we'd be happy to see if we can get you on the show.
There's also 2 opportunities to become Mythic this month.
Why?
Because when they do their big update on the 11th of August or whatever, they're ending the season early, giving qualifications to top 500 Mythics, then starting a new season and dropping Mythic players back to Diamond.
Nice. Somebody read the update. I did not read the state of the update this month. So
I read Robert Taylor's summary on Twitter, so that's all I read.
See, that's what I usually read. I just follow Fire Shoes. So that's good.
I haven't even read Twitter, so I'm behind.
Awesome. That's good. Thanks for plugging that, West. I appreciate that.
Happy to relay things.
So today we're going to talk about getting Mythic with Red Black in AFR. Wes, last night you and I played a Star Wars tabletop RPG, and
factual.
And you were commenting. I don't remember the comment you made. I think you made the comment that somebody had drawn 4 lands in a row. Haha, typical AFR. And
that was me as we were beginning the night. Yes.
Yeah. As you, like Michaela, like to play games before we do other activities so that we all have to wait for you. Just kidding.
Hey, this is a codified part of Magic podcasting the world over.
But, it was funny because I mentioned that I thought this was the worst draft format of, at least the last 5 years. And I'm a really positive person when it comes to Magic. I think people have faulted me saying I'm like a shill for Wizards, and I'm too positive. But going into this, I just want to preface this with I know there's a lot of negativity around this format, and I am one of those voices. In all honesty, West was doubtful that he mentioned Ixalan and all these formats that I should have hated more than AFR. And I looked at every single Magic set that I have ever drafted of the base Magic sets. Since I started, my first draft was M11, and this is bottom 3 pretty easy for me. So I'm excited.
Man, you started on a sweet draft set too.
M11? Yeah, I think
M11 Control City. That was a great format.
That's so funny. Michaela and I were literally reminiscing about M11 I don't know 3 weeks ago.
I don't believe I agree with most people that this is not the set that's gonna give me the most depth of gameplay or the most replayability. Yet I was excited. We're recording this August 1st. I was excited yesterday for the reset of Ladder because I'd been just holding my spot in Mythic and didn't want to play any more games because I didn't want to lose ranks. I was excited to be able to start playing Best of 1 again after having to play Best of 3 for the last half of this month.
Michaela, what were you going to say?
I lost it already.
I'm sure it was about M11.
Yeah, I'm sure it was too, but it's gone.
Casting Preordain's great.
Michaela, just really quickly, I'm giving kind of my overall voice. I don't want to set too negative a tone for this show. I'm glad that Wes was excited to jump back in a draft. I think you told me that you've done 7 drafts or something of this one. So is it pretty low for you too? Just not that into it, or just not feeling limited right now?
Time right now is my biggest thing. So I haven't been super deep in this format. I will say I did a bot draft in this format just because that's what I had time to do that day, and I hated it. Specifically hated the bot draft. There was just something about it that did not feel good at all. I think Eldraine was kind of that way too, where the human draft versus bot draft had a very, very, very different feel. But so far, the human drafts on Arena I have enjoyed. Not my favorite format, but I've enjoyed them.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the format overall. And Wes, I want to ask you. So you kind of mentioned. I think you said you peaked out at 4, or did you get higher than that at your next round?
No, 4 was my peak.
So you got as high as 4 this month, and you were pretty exclusively drafting Red Black, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I want to ask you though, is there a card, not just in Red Black, but in the format overall, that moved up or down? What was your biggest mover for the format?
I think the card I think of when I think of like playing these decks and like the card that like over the course of this run that just like went from being like, oh, this is a card I get to put in my deck to like, oh my goodness, I'm sitting this card 5th, we're in, is Reaper's Talisman. It's a card I cannot like sell well enough. This is an uncommon. It costs a single black mana. It's an artifact equipment. Equips for 2 mana, and what it does is when you attack with an equipped creature, it gets Death Touch, and when you attack alone with the equipped creature, the defending opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. And I found this card to be like kind of undervalued by the format at large, and I was just like winning games with this card over and over and over again, and it just like has skyrocketed in my pick order. I think there's a lot of rares I would pick this card over at this point.
Interesting. You cannot play this on the Pack Tactics 3-1 and get both bonuses of the Pack Tactics and the Drain, and the Death Touch, which is kind of sad, but...
No, you can get the Death Touch. Well, yeah, you can get the Death Touch without the Drain.
Right. You just can't get the Drain. I just meant you couldn't get all of it. Like, you can't...
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah, if I'm attacking with a Hobgoblin Captain equipped with a Reaper's Talisman, I'm probably winning that game whether or not I'm getting First Strike and Menace.
Sure.
Or First Strike, but yeah.
What do you think it is about the card? Like, I'm a little surprised to hear this, mostly because it doesn't seem like a format where you do a lot of single attacks. In whether it's Gruul, whether it's... I mean, Blue-Black seems like it does it a lot, but I'm just curious why in Red-Black it moved up so much for you.
Because it makes it so that it basically doesn't matter which other pieces of cardboard I draw, as long as I draw pieces of cardboard that aren't lands a little bit. It just makes it so that any creatures I have get in there. It's impossible to race, because I'm leaving all my other blockers back. Every block they have on the creature I'm attacking with, which is probably my worst creature, is bad. Because the creature has Death Touch. It just really adds this piece of inevitability and variance reduction that I really value in this format. And sometimes you draw 2 in them, and it's not close when you have 2 of that card.
That makes sense. What do you think the best archetypes are?
Well, the best archetype is very clearly Black-Red. I think that's super non-negotiable. And I think that the strongest follow-up to that is the 2 other playable red decks. Unfortunately, I think Blue-Red is not a thing in this format, but I think that Red-White and Red-Green are both very strong contenders. In fact, I think Red-Green is often the deck I lose to the most against when playing Black-Red, because like Owlbear into Owlbear is like pretty unbeatable. And red-white decks can be way faster than red-black decks when things come together, especially with a turn 4 Brunor. After that, I would say that green-white and black-white are like the decks that can actually control the aggro decks of this format. Green-white often gets the beatdown on itself, but not always because of the life gain. And then after those 5 archetypes, I'd say that Black-green isn't really playable, and then all blue decks are the worst decks in the format, with probably the best blue deck in the format being blue-white, and that's just because white has the defensive tools to help like blue shine.
I mean, I'm curious, Michaela, because you've done the fewer drafts. You were actually the first person. You were the first person to come to me and say, this format is super aggressive and 2 drops are really important. Does what West is saying, does it align with your initial impressions?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was pretty high in Gruul, but in my games, I've seen a lot of red-black out there. So that, I didn't have a lot to respond to that, because what I was hearing was, yeah, this is what I'm seeing also. And I definitely agree. Maybe selling blue-red a little short. I did get to work, but I might have had a pretty powerful uncommon stack in that deck.
That is what it takes to make blue good. Is like you have to get the good rares and uncommons for blue, and that's fine.
Yeah, Oh, go ahead.
It's just building decks out of common is like, if you're gonna like win match over match on like ladder with a strategy, right? Like you have to be able to like make your decks work out of commons, because you can't guarantee what you're finding. Mm-hmm. But absolutely, when the right blue cards show up and show up early in your draft, you can have a good blue deck.
Yeah, I have not trophied with the blue deck yet. I do have multiple 6-1s with blue-black. But both of those decks, I think I have 2 of them. One of them had a mythic, and the other had a rare, and they both had the 1/3 legendary guy. And I also think that they both had the 2/1 that when it attacks alone, it's unblockable, and when it hits them, you adventure. So,
yeah, Yuan-Ti Infiltrator, I want to say is what it's called. That card's nuts. That card is very good.
Yeah, I have first picked that card, I think every time I've seen it, and it certainly wins a lot of games. It's funny. I think the biggest problem with blue in this format, for what it's worth, in my noticing, and I just want to kind of call this out when we talk about best archetypes, is actually
Yuan-Ti Malison.
I was going to say that Charm Sleep often has to trade down in mana.
Yeah.
It's like a pretty huge problem in this format. And go ahead.
No, you totally have the right of that. I'm not going to say it's an original idea to me because other podcasts are out there saying it, but Charmed Sleep I think is closer to unplayable than it is a high pick in blue.
I think that's a little bit hyperbole, but I do know that people are saying that.
Yeah.
Like, what else are you going to do? Like, you have the option to play Charm Sleep or not play Removal. I'm going to play Charm Sleep.
I think the one time I was in blue, I was getting my Charm Sleeps like 10th, 11th pick.
Right.
So that was a good enough reason for me to be in blue at that point.
That's my point, too, is like you can get Charm Sleep as late as you want. I also think that maybe it's a trap. And we'll get into this in the format. So maybe the talking heads are right, and Spencer, the reason that you hate this format is because you end up in blue-black or blue-red with, 2 Charm Sleeps every time because you're getting them 11th pick, but, you're getting them 11th pick because you just shouldn't be playing them. And that certainly could be true, and I think that also leads into some of my problems. Okay.
Well, like, I would rather play Clever Conjurer on 3 against a 2-drop than Charm Sleep every time.
Sure, just impacting the board in a different way.
And getting to a 5-drop faster.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a 2/3 also, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk really quickly about mana bases in the format. I think that this one's pretty simple. The thing that I want to ask you, West, is do you find that your splits have gotten weird to just like really lean into which you have more 2-drops of rather than really worrying about what your double spells are?
I haven't thought of the game like that. I've played a lot of 16 land decks in this format. I think I've gone as low as 15 lands in some decks on best of 1. I still don't have a full understanding of what the hand smoother does, but I'm going to trust the people who tell me that it works close to like that. That said, I also have played I'm actually looking right now at the deck that got me into Mythic. My legendary double Planeswalker black-red deck with both Zerial and Lolth. And I had 18 lands in that deck.
I trophied and sealed with those Planeswalkers.
Yeah, no, it's really good. But I think that a huge challenge of this deck is figuring out how you're going to reduce the variance of Magic to make sure that you are always on the winning side of that. And sometimes that's you're going to play fewer lands because your deck is bad if you draw 6 lands. And sometimes you're going to play 18 lands because you're going to lose if you don't play your 4-drops. And I think that when I think of mana bases in this format, I actually don't think about lands. I think about treasure. I think treasure is such a huge part of what makes this format tick for me, and it's a huge part of why I like black-red and why everyone likes black-red is because the gold uncommon Kalain who enters the battlefield and makes a treasure. I really love the 3-mana 2/2 that enters the battlefield and makes a treasure or destroys an artifact. It's my favorite Manic Vandal ever.
Dude, that card. I think Michaela and I talked about that card on the podcast. I don't know.
We did.
Yeah, but that card is that is the craziest Manic. That card's so good.
Yeah.
Also, killing your opponent's treasure with it is legit.
Yeah, I do like that. I love the Fulminator Mage aspect of that card sometimes, yes.
I want to talk about this point really... go ahead, Michaela.
I do have a question. Do you find yourself ever splashing other color off treasures or mostly just using treasures as a tool? Because a lot of cards do want those treasures to give a creature haste or pump or anything like that.
Both. I definitely have splashed sweet rares. I think I was looking through my trophy deck picks, and I had one where I was splashing Xanathar entirely off of Treasure in a black-red deck. I've definitely put Ochre Deli in a lot of decks when I've seen that card, because that card has costs nothing to put in your deck if you have Treasure laying around. I think that if your deck has either consistent venturing mechanics, or if you have 4 or more cheap treasure makers in your deck, and you know that you're going to be using that treasure to cast your splash thing, because that's just a very powerful option you have, I think that it's very possible to just put splash cards in your deck without ever putting a basic of that color. Temple of the Dragon Queen's also great for that purpose, because you're not committing Evolving Wilds to putting basics in your deck, which is great because I like playing 1-drops in this format, and playing 1-drops is really hard if you're playing lands in your deck that don't cast spells, or don't cast your colored spells. So it really depends, but also lots of treasure does make splashing really easy.
So Michaela actually asked the first part of what I was going to say, and the second part was, we kind of mentioned blue-red for just a second, and I have actually, and it's funny that you mentioned how much you like black-red because of the treasure stuff, right? And blue-red kind of gets to do the same thing in a lot of cases, where but I've actually found that the chew one that you pay to roll a dice, to draw cards. If you do not get those, you will not get it to 5 wins. You have to have that 2-drop specifically. And one of the reasons for that is you can start activating it pretty quickly because of treasure. And it also, like you said, you need things to do with your mana in this format. And, you're going to adventure a lot less in something like blue-red. So you're just going to have a bunch of mana lying around because you have treasures. And then also your dice rolling cards create a bunch of other weird incremental advantages. So you need good dice payoffs, and then things that let you roll dice a lot, like the 4/3 that draws you 1,000 cards. I'm curious if black-red is taking the things that blue-red needs to be successful because black is so strong, and kind of your opinion on that.
So that's an interesting thought, right? And the thing about blue-red, right, is blue-red is a deck where when you know your blue-red, your pick order changes because of it, right? And that's the thing we want in Limited, right? We love to see I value these cards higher than I would in other decks, and higher than other people normally value them, because it makes decks stronger because you get picks that you wouldn't have had options with otherwise. And I really like Arcane Investigator, that 2-mana 2/1. Because it's the only 2-drop in blue-red that you want that other red drafters don't want, that's actually good.
Yeah, it's funny because because
the Pixie Guide is very bad on defense. It's never trading with things, which I really value. And that dwarf, the Brazen, whatever it is, I wish it was a Brazen Borrower. It's not. Is just, I don't want to touch that card. But Arcane Investigator is, I think, it's one of my top blue commons because of how important having 2-drops of any kind is in this format.
Yeah, actually, I want to get into what you just said, and I think the color rankings will help with this, because you just mentioned 1/3s for 2 that should enable this blue-red deck that don't. They actually...
Speaking of it, yeah.
So, and I think it has to do with what the colors are doing. So, why don't you talk about the colors and then rank them? Why are 1/3s bad?
It's funny that you say this, because outside of red, I could basically rank the colors by how good I think their 2-mana 1/3 is. Because I love Horde Robber. I actually really like the Dawnbringer Excavator, I think is its name, or Dawnbringer Cleric. I don't remember exactly what
the 1/3 that has the 3 modes, right? On the
the one that either you exile a creature or a card from a graveyard, you destroy an enchantment,
or gain 2 life.
Or gain 2 life. That card's great. I also don't like Scaled Herbalist. Basically, I only like those 2-mana 1/3s, and it's because the things they provide is stuff I'm interested in.
Yeah, putting a land into play is not that helpful in this format.
Never has been in limited. It really just like I can't think of like
Why do they
any
keep
time.
printing this?
Well, Sakura Tribe Elder's a sweet, or Sakura Tribe Scout. Sakura Tribe Scout is a sweet magic card, and will always be a sweet magic card if you've got Scrib Ranger in your deck in Commander. But I don't know why you would want it in limited ever.
Okay. So do you think that? So does that mean that you rank the colors literally black, red, white, green, blue?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the reason I think about that is that black has just like this extremely solid middle pack of commons. Like there are, maybe a few commons towards the bottom that I really won't draft, and there are a couple of commons towards the top that I'm really excited to put in my deck. Grim Bounty notably, again, a treasure maker, which is super powerful, and cards like Deadly Dispute and Feign Death that are like great at making it so that your opponent's interaction with you doesn't work as well as they want it to, and giving you a substantial advantage. I really like red for reasons I'm sure anyone who's listening and thinking about limited knows. It's got strong aggressive 2-drops. It's got great removal. It has just fantastic plays all the way up the curve. I'd say its 5-drops are a bit weak, but I like the 5-drops in white, which I pair with it pretty often, and the 5-drops in green. And if you're playing red-black, you can basically skip 5-drops and go straight to 6 whenever you want.
Yeah, one of the... I have, like, so many thoughts on what you just said. The first thought that I have, it was a thought that I had earlier, which was you talked about kind of, like, how the number of lands that you play. And I really like Gruul in this format. And originally, my color rankings were red, black, green, white, blue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they are now red, black, white, green, blue. And there's a couple reasons for that. I think every red deck is good, but not every black deck is good. Or every red deck can be playable. Like even red, blue can be playable, but in some ways, I think that one of the problems that Gruul has, which is my favorite deck in this format for what it's worth. Like I really like Gruul decks, but it actually suffers the most from the you need to like understand how many lands you should play problem in this format. And the reason for that is because, well, first of all, Owlbear. Like I'm not only am I playing a ton of 2-drops. Like Michaela and I were talking about this last week, but like I don't know if you saw one of the trophy decks that I put in the Easy Discord West, but I had 6 Null Hunters.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I mean it was
3 Null Hunters is like such a good board state.
Like it was busted. And the thing is that Null Hunter is still going super late. Like, I did a draft the other day. That's one of the reasons I like Gruul so much in this format. The problem is that I have this dichotomy between wanting to play every 2-drop, every good aggressive 2-drop, and also get to 6-mana dragons and owlbears. Because I think that you want to play the 6-mana dragons and owlbears. And
no, it's super true. And actually, looking at your green-red deck, in that has the card that actually solves this whole problem. It has Unexpected Windfall in it, which is totally the card that, like, if I'm trying to figure out how to... It has 2 of them, right? The discard one? I only saw one, but it's possible that... Yeah, I only see one in that, but I think you have one in the sideboard and could be playing both. Like maybe that's better than you.
I probably should have been playing both. Anyway, my point is that like the color rankings and what we're talking about here actually manifests in the problem with the mana in this format and the dichotomy between its aggressiveness and the power of its honestly 4, 5, and 6-drops. Like for example, I think Gruul is actually happy to play the 5-mana red removal spell. The roll a dice one. I think it loves that card, but also like how many expensive cards can you actually afford to play in the format?
Probably more than you can afford to play 3-drops.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. You just like don't play 3-drops, just play 2-drops, 4-drops, 5-drops, and 6-drops.
I mean, like when I think about like what I want out of a 3-drop is they're either like the good uncommons, they're the like pieces of cardboard that give me a treasure and also interact with a 2-drop, like my Plundering Barbarians or the -2/-2 enchantment that that ventures into the dungeon. Like, there are a lot of 3-drops in this format that I think like just don't pull weight when Hobgoblin Captain is around. And like, you know, like being glutted on 3-drops is like a classic limited problem that like is especially bad in this format.
That makes a ton of sense.
I think I probably play about the same number of 3-drops and 4-drops in a deck is where I've been.
Yeah.
Which is unusual for me.
It's funny. It's funny though, because I know that Michaela, you and I are both high on the dwarf that makes a treasure. I don't consider that card like a normal 3-drop when I'm like building my deck.
No, that card's like you can play any number of that card and it's good. Also, like so much of like end game states of this format are about good artifacts that like it's a good top deck.
Yeah. Michaela, any thoughts? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I probably put green above white in power level. I think the biggest issue with green is there's just so many cards at common that in the archetypes that you really want to be playing green, they just don't fit into those archetypes.
Yeah. The card that pulls me into green more than anything else is Prosperous Innkeeper. That's the card that when I see it, I'm like, okay, I'm excited to play green now.
I actually don't remember which card that is.
Prosperous Innkeeper is 1 and a green for a 1/1. It enters the battlefield and makes a treasure.
Oh, yeah,
and then whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life.
Yeah, that card's been surprisingly good.
That card is like, I mean, something that's interesting is like the commons that I like in this format have all started showing up in Constructed. There are cards like Shambling Ghast, Deadly Dispute, or commons and uncommons. Like the cards I really value in this format are all like cards that like make a treasure. I really like Skullport Merchant in this format. That's probably my favorite 3-drop creature in the format. This is a 2 and a black for a 1/4. When it enters the battlefield, it makes a treasure, and you can spend 1 and a black to sacrifice a creature or treasure and draw a card. Like that card, I think is like a huge house in this game, and I've won a lot of games off of the back of that, making sure I never run out of gas. But being like Thieves' Tool, right? Like this is a common that like looks like it should be totally unplayable. It's 1 and a black for an equipment that equips for 2. It makes a creature with power 3 or less unblockable, but it enters the battlefield and makes a treasure. That's the reason I'm playing this card, is because it's helping me like cast a 4 or 5 drop a turn early, and I have this like valuable resource around, or like it lets me draw a card off of my Hired Hexblade, right? Recouping my card advantage. But like the power of like this format is about treasure. And like it makes sense. Like treasure is a super powerful thing to have in play because it totally. I mean, it's like the card Lotus Petal is not a fair Magic card, right? If you want Lotus Petals in your deck, you're not doing fair things in Magic, and this format is just giving you free Lotus Petals that don't cost cards, and that seems really powerful.
Awesome. Anyone want any other thoughts between the two of you on color rankings before we move on to the top 3 commons overall?
I'm gonna figure out a way to win with blue. That's all I got.
I think the thing is, right? I have a lot of 6-win
blue
decks.
Black.
Yeah, blue black.
I've lost to blue black quite a bit, and that's been kind of on the back of my opponent having those gold uncommons and rares. So, as we went back, going back to close to the beginning of the episode where we were talking about, it's not an archetype that's depending on those commons. It's you need to get those powerful cards.
It's funny because you would think that based on the kind of that mana problem that we've set out, right, that blue-white would actually just be really strong in this format. Just based on, like, you get to adventure and, like, manipulate the game and get extra value out of stuff. I think the actual problem is that black-red is too good, not that the other colors are bad, for what it's worth.
I agree. I think that, like, and hopefully we're getting to the point where draft is self-correcting to this point where, like, there are 3 to 4 black-red drafters at any given table, making it so that their decks are all, like, okay. And there's, like, 1 blue drafter at any given table, making their deck awesome. And if we're getting there, then, like, I think I want to be that blue drafter, and I don't want to be the red-black drafters. That said, like, when I think about, like, why I like black in this format, why I like red in this format is, like, they're, like, fifth worst common is like I'd pick it over most blue commons. Like, and that makes it really hard for me to get into blue unless I'm opening like blue bombs or getting past solid blue cards, like very solid blue cards.
Let's actually talk about those top commons. Like, what are your top 3 commons for this format?
I think I'm picking Dragon's Fire over every common. And I'm probably picking Hobgoblin Captain over every common. My biases are just pretty strong there.
That's an uncommon, right?
Hobgoblin Captain? No,
It's
this
a
is
3/1.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
3/1, pack tactics, it gains first strike.
I was thinking he was talking about the battle cry goblin.
Battlecry Goblin. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely picking Battlecry Goblin over every common, and I'm thinking really hard when I see Dragon's Fire and Battlecry Common next to each other. Pack 1, pick 1. Yeah, no, I'm thinking really hard. Like, it's not close, but like, you're not going to see another Dragon's Fire for the rest of the draft, Spencer.
You're also not going to see another Battlecry Goblin.
My luck is weird on this one. Michaela and I were talking about this before the session, or before the start of the podcast. We both think we've seen Battlecry Goblins at a higher clip than Dragon's Fires.
Oh, that's crazy. Okay, and then your third, I assume, is Grim Bounty?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that my top 2 are in your top 3. I don't know what my third would be outside of Grim Bounty and I don't even remember.
You don't? It's Owlbear.
I mean, that is what I said on our top.
It's also what you're picking because you love it.
I mean, Owlbear is sweet. Don't put words in my mouth that I already said on this podcast, West.
I just know your predilections in Magic.
I'm curious, Michaela, if you really like Gruul like I do in this format. Are there any green cards that break into your top 3 commons, or are your commons mostly black and red too?
I think they have to be mostly black-red. I think the hard part about looking in the pack 1 and seeing a green common is, that green common's probably coming back with how people have been drafting, as opposed to the black or red one probably isn't.
Yeah, I think that's true. Let's go on to this last question about format, and then we can actually get into red-black because you almost exclusively drafted that in your Mythic run. And I actually think this format breaks this question, for what it's worth. I think this is the first format that neither of these things and both of these things are true at the same time. And I want to ask you, is this format Pauper or Prince?
I mean, I just keep opening up this screenshot I have of my deck with Zerial, Lolth, and Westgate Regent in it. And then I look at those cards, and you know the card that excites me more than any of those? Kalane, Reclusive Painter. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I would rather have, like, a Kalane in my pack 1, pick 1, or, like, Zerial. I mean, it's actually not close at Zerial, but, like, Lolth versus Kalane, I'm not sure.
I think that this format has another dichotomy where, for certain archetypes, the format is Prince. And for certain archetypes, the format is Pauper.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's totally like the good black-red cards in common and uncommon are so good that they're like better than most of like the blue mythics. Like, I'd rather be starting my draft on those in a lot of ways. Like, obviously I'm taking the blue mythics because Mordenkainen sounds awesome. Like, I'm going to play that card. I'm going to go win with it. I'm going to play a lot of Clever Conjurers to get that card out early. But it's really hard because I know that like my opponents that like start on like the Goblin Javelineer into a Hobgoblin Captain into a Plundering Barbarian are beating my draw with my Mythic Blue Bomb every time.
Yeah, I guess another thing that I've noticed is when my opponents have played a powerful Mythic or Rare, it seems like no matter what I'm playing, I've had some type of answer to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think the removal in this format is actually surprisingly strong.
I really appreciate, actually, that the red removal spells all interact with Planeswalkers.
Yeah. Let's go into red-black. I mean, this probably won't be the longest part of the podcast. I think that you know this format pretty well, as far as this deck goes. What kind of pulls you into that?
Ways I end up in red-black are you fire up Arena? Yeah, well, I mean, for what it's worth, when I was drafting heavy red-black, it was way easier for me to get into red-black than it is now. Because I was not facing the competition. I was seeing 4th pick Kalanes. I was seeing just people ignoring really good cards of this format. But I would say that one way to help yourself out to finding your way into red-black more often and more easily and with better cards is when you start with good red cards in this format, pick Price of Loyalty as if you're going to end up red-black. Not wait until you have black cards. Because one thing that this format is that good red cards get snapped up and are way more pickable than good black cards early, right? The only black card that I'm picking in my first 4 picks really, at common, is Grim Bounty. But I'm picking Dragon's Fire, I'm picking Hobgoblin Captain, I'm picking Plundering Barbarians, and the Armory Veteran, the other good 2-drop in red. I'm picking all of those cards in my first 5 picks of the draft pretty often. And so if I'm ending up with 3 red cards and maybe a good white card because that's what I saw and whatever, and I see a Price of Loyalty in an empty pack or a relatively empty pack, instead of maybe going with that other color or even picking my first black card, picking that Price of Loyalty sets me up to think I'm going to value Sepulchre Ghoul and Deadly Dispute at a higher rate after that point. Immediately that means that there are now 2 medium black commons that become good black commons for me.
So it's almost like a hybrid card. It's not necessarily a 2-color card, but you're saying you look at Price of Loyalty as it costs hybrid red-black, and then 2 or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a card that if I pick it and end up red-white, I'm probably still going to make playables and probably not play it. But we're getting to the point now where the secret's out on that card, right? Act of Treason is a great thing to do in a format with a bunch of good sacrifice cards, but that's the card that I'm not going to see again. I'm going to see multiple of the sacrifice cards, and if that's actually a lesson I feel I learned late, is that I am not going to get the Price of Loyalties, but I'm going to have no trouble picking up the Sepulchre Ghouls.
You kind of answered this next question, but are there other things that you think this deck must have?
I think it's hard because I actually think this deck, one of the powers of this deck is it can be your 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop beatdown deck, or, Kalane into Jaded Sellsword, right? Which is an unbeatable start. That's the uncommon gold card into the 4-mana 4/3 that gets first strike and haste when it's cast with the treasure, and it's a 5/4 when you cast it off Kalane, right? That's just
it's a dragon.
Yeah, and it's a dragon. That's true. That's actually so important that card adds additional dragons to your deck if you've got Dragon's Fire, because when Dragon's Fire kills 4-drops, it's insanely good. Or I love all of that, but also. I think that if you start off of a good black or red 5-drop, something in the bombier category, or a dragon or whatever, I think you can build this deck not as control deck, because I don't think there's any control deck in this format, and if there is, I think black red probably can build the closest to it because it just has the good removal and the good card advantage. But you can build a mid-rangier black-red deck where you're thinking in terms of okay, if I have Horde Robbers and I'm making treasure by attacking with those, I'm powering out really big cards faster in the game than I should be, as opposed to I'm gonna really beat down my opponent. I do think that other podcasts have made this point, right? Know whether you're winning with your 5-drops or winning with your 2-drops, and black-red's great because it can win really hard with both 5-drops and 2-drops. Cards that I think that the red cards all speak for themselves in black red. It's which black cards you choose to play and how you arrange them that I think really kind of is the special sauce of this deck, right? Curving Shambling Ghast into Deadly Dispute into 5-drop on turn 3 that's unbeatable is awesome. Is really cool. And I think that that's a perfectly playable line in black red, just as much as going Goblin Javelineer into Hobgoblin Captain is into like I said, a Yuan-Ti Fangblade or a Plundering Barbarian, right? One of these other redundant red commons, red or black commons, and like it just does it all, and just have an idea of what your like good opening hands look like, whether you should be keeping your like rampy opening hands or your aggressive opening hands in this deck.
Just so you know, anytime that you're thinking drafting archetypes, make sure you just say it on the
fair enough
on the podcast. I mean, it's on the network. Like you can just
actually can say that I haven't listened to that much drafting archetypes for AFR yet.
Oh,
I listened to a lot of it for Strixhaven. I did not listen to much of it for AFR.
Yeah, I do think that Sam did a really early podcast on Red Black. Like it was the first archetype he did, and he's like, "Listen, the data says this is the best deck by a pretty substantial margin. Y'all need to start drafting it so that we can draft other things." Because
yes, that's totally true.
Like if you do not, the winning decks are always just going to be black red.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. I already think I know the answer to this. This is like a typical question I ask for limited Mythic players. But are there any trap cards in this format or in this? I mean, you mentioned one, but I want to know if there are any for Red Black specifically.
I'd say that like Hired Hexblade is probably a card that I consider like a little trappy because
is that the 2/1 Death Touch one?
No, Hired Hexblade is the 2-mana 2/2 that if you spend a treasure to cast it, you draw a card
and lose 1 life.
Like, well, no. Like, it's a good card. Like, I will play it in my decks, but what I need to do before I'm playing it is know that I'm always drawing a card off of it. It's always going to be a Phyrexian Rager for me, which I think as we go on in this format, it will be a lot less of. Yeah.
Okay, I would say, I have never had that not be a Phyrexian Rager.
I just don't cast it if it's a 2-mana 2/2. I agree, but like I think that's like not like it's bad funny? To have those empty turns.
The card is so good because in my head it's a 2/1. Okay. Why is that a 2/2?
It reminds me a lot of the card in Kaldheim that if you make it into a 3/3, it dies into a 2/2.
Sure.
Like in that, like it's fine if you have to play it as a 2-mana 2/2, and like this format demands that. But I think in black red you can usually do better. But like it's at its best if your deck has like a number of like treasure already. I think what it isn't is it's not like if I see that card like in like pick 6, pick 7, right? Like that's not even close to an idea that black's going to keep coming to me.
Yeah,
that's fair. I've noticed like when I'm cast that card, it's always like turn 4, turn 5 too.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is when you should be casting Glorious Chargers or whatever, right? Or Devoted Paladins, I think is what it is. It's I want to splash that card in black right now.
I do think for what it's worth that like that if you're getting like I do think that's one of the better cards against green white specifically, where like I'm able to flex it, like make sure that I have a 2-drop and also sift through my deck, right? Because the problem that I think that red black has against green white is that there's a reason that it's like the deck that supposedly beats it on 17 lands, and I think
that makes sense. That speaks to my experiences. A lot of my losing with black red, as the deck was starting to like fall off and becoming more drafted, was the fact that like I couldn't get the job done before Owlbear into Herdgorger Giant.
Yeah, so I think the flexibility of it being kind of this 4-drop, 5-drop value creature that's not really that, right? Like you got to spend all of your mana that turn on multiple things, in addition to just being able to get down, is actually good. So like while you're saying it's a trap card, I think that it is good against specifically the deck that's good against you.
Yeah, although the answer for how I typically beat green-white goes back to my favorite uncommon in this deck, Reaper's Talisman.
Sure.
That card does not care how big your opponent's 7/6 is.
Sure. That's fair.
So, at what point in the draft do you start seeing that red-black is not an option for you?
I'd say that, I mean, I don't know. I think that if I've like, I mean, typically I'll claw my way deep into red. Is what I'll do. And whether or not I have to fight for red, I don't know. It's good enough to fight over. And whether or not black is the other color I'm going to pair with it is an interesting question. And it is, I would say that, like, if I'm not getting past, like, black uncommons is usually when I know that I'm going to, like, have to pick white commons instead. Typically what happens for me if I try to draft red black and it doesn't work out is I pick like every good red common I see, and once I start running out of those, which is fast, the question is, do I have black cards to pick that are better than the Steadfast Paladin or the 3/1 that if you equip it has bigger toughness, or the Devoted Paladin, the 5-drop 4/4 that gives creatures +1/+1 and vigilance until end of turn, right? Like, my backdoor is usually into, like, not like a red-white equipment deck, which usually starts with some different cards. Like, it starts with like a Brunor or like Boots of Speed already being in my pile. It's like red-white, and I'm just going 2-drop, 3-drop, Arborea Pegasus, 5-mana 4/4, give my guides vigilance, attack with everything again, you're dead.
That's so interesting, because I feel like we're starting in the same place, but for me, the fact that red-white cares so much about equipment leads me to never really start in red and end up in Boros. I usually start in red and end up in Gruul if black isn't open, because they care about really similar things. So it's really interesting to me that, like, if you don't end up in that, like, if I were to describe this format to somebody, I would describe it as the Jund format in a lot of ways, where it's like, it's like the, actually that's not true. I would describe this format as probably as like Sith Jund or Sith Naya or something, where like you end up like Jund Naya a lot of the time, or Jund a lot of the time. Like you're just so rarely in the other color. But the thing is that your white cards are being battled with whoever the blue drafter is pretty often. Because I think that
I'm picking different white cards than the blue drafter is.
Are you though? Because like you care about the same 2-drops.
Well, that's the thing, is that like I'm picking my 2-drops, like the 6 2-drops that my deck is going to have at the end of the draft. I picked all between 1 and 4.
That's fair.
On every pack. Is the way I'm drafting this format.
So you're just not getting white 2-drops then?
I'm getting white 2-drops, but I'm picking them at 4th pick, 5th pick.
In packs 2 and 3.
Well, once I know I'm in white, I'm picking them like 2nd pick in pack 2.
Okay.
The cards I'm not fighting because of like if I'm red white and I like know I'm red white at the outset, my pick orders are a little different than if I'm backdooring my way into red white. If like I'm not like much of an equipment deck, the cards I'm specifically valuing are Arborea Pegasus and Devoted Paladin, which feel very much like there was a limited set or a core set like 2019, I want to say, where like, or 2020, I don't remember which, where like the idea of the format was basically you go Pegasus Charger into a 4-mana 3/3 that gives your creatures +1/+1 until end of turn, and maybe vigilance, or like taps things when it attacks or whatever. I don't quite remember, but like that was the format. I'm kind of doing that, but like a step later on the curve. And like that's kind of my deck strategy, is like my backdoor there is I'm just like hoping that. And I think a big difference is that it's probably because as soon as I run out of good red cards to pick and don't see any good black cards, you're picking the Owlbear out of the pack. I'm picking the Devoted Paladin out of the pack, or picking the 2-mana, the Steadfast Paladin.
That makes a lot of sense. Any other questions for Wes before we move on, Michaela?
I don't think so.
Yeah, this was a really. I'm not gonna lie. This conversation was more in depth than I thought it was gonna be. I liked it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's. Like, this format is like, which commons are you trying to attack with? Not like, which commons are you trying to build an engine with?
Sure.
Unless you're in black. Black, I think, has the only engines in the format, and I think of like Deadly Dispute as like the engine cards of the format, or Unexpected Windfall being not an engine card, but a splash your double color bomb off color card, which I think it's great at. Like, they're probably great. Like, you know, like if I'm playing this format in 2 weeks from now, I think a lot of what I'm doing is like drafting a ton of Unexpected Windfalls and like splashing every bomb I can find.
That's fair. First of all, Wes, thank you for coming on. Also, thank you for, I don't know, the insights. I think that it's interesting. You have differing opinions to some of the other podcasts that I've listened to. You know, whether it's drafting archetypes, limited resources, or Lords of Limited, and I really liked hearing from you. So I want to thank you for that. Is there a place that people can find you if they want to kind of see what you're working on in Magic or in life?
Well, I'd say that the place where you can see most of what I'm doing in Limited is the Heezy Game Media Discord. I think I'm pretty good at posting. I've not been recently, but I've not been trophying a lot recently. I'm pretty good at posting my Limited trophy decks in there. I am always happy to grab a conversation about Limited in the Heezy Game Media Discord. On Twitter, you can find me at East_monotone, MONOTONNE. Other than that, I don't know. See me on Ladder.
Cool. Don't forget to listen to the rest of the Constructive Criticism Network. You can find me at Spencer30H. Michaela, you can be found everywhere at Mythic Michaela. I've decided that I'm just going to stay on the show, right? Like,
yep.
It's just, you know, Twitch, Twitter. Do you have another thing that I don't plug enough?
I have a very rarely used Instagram.
Ooh, is it?
So
Mythic
we don't need
Michaela?
to plug that. Yes, it is.
But do you post updates to like your cosplays there?
Occasionally. Like,
Ooh.
It's been months.
But you said you were working on a new one, so now I'm like curious. All right. You can find the podcast at Arena Mythic Cast. You can like the show, subscribe, leave a comment. We do have these. I'm sure you grab these for the people at home. We have a lot of these things. They're wristbands. I'm actually wearing one right now. For hashtag Ready to Battle to kick off. We didn't do the segment this week. I forgot to put it in the show. That's my bad. But yeah, I've got a ton of them. I've got children's sizes. I've got adult sizes. I've got them in glow-in-the-dark orange, glow-in-the-dark blue. They're pretty sweet. And we're actually giving them out right now just for free, as well as to everyone who becomes a patron. So head on over to patreon.com/MythicCast. Get your wristband. Show people that you are hashtag ready for battle. And yeah, I think that's it. You know, head on, check out our sponsors, check out our Patreon. Wes, thank you again for coming. Michaela, thank you so much for being here with me every week. And your Jigglypuff on my screen looks like it's cross-eyed, and I just wanted to mention that.
It's sideways.
Oh, yeah. That makes more sense.
That
makes more sense. All right, well.
It's facing the other wall for some reason. I don't know why. That wasn't my choice.
I was like, that looks so weird.
I have cosplaying Pikachu right behind me.
Ooh, I can see now that you've moved your chair.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Well, thank you everybody so much for listening, and we'll see y'all next week with another episode of Arena Mythic Cast.
See y'all.
Thanks for having me on.